Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to unearth literally 18 years of buried secrets hidden inside one of the greatest literary masterpieces ever written, Charles Dickens's A Tale of Two Cities. Now, we often think of the story as this massive, sweeping historical epic about the French Revolution. But actually, at its very core, it's a thrilling, deeply psychological mystery. It's really an investigation into what happens when the darkest traumas of the past are locked away in both a literal and metaphorical dungeon, and the absolute catastrophic chain reactions that occur when they're finally dug up. So get comfortable because the secrets we're about to explore have been buried for almost 2 decades, and honestly, unearthing them is going to change everything.
Let's plunge right into the mystery, shall we? Picture the scene. It's a freezing, foggy Friday night, late in November of 1775. The narrative hits us immediately with this haunting question. Buried how long? Almost 18 years. Our guy, Mr. Jarvis Lorry, an elderly banker, is riding in this lumbering Dover mail carriage. Outside there's this steaming, clammy mist covering the hills like an evil spirit. Inside, Mr. Lorry is kind of dozing off, but he's haunted by these dark night shadows. In his dream, he keeps having this bizarre conversation with a ghostly specter of a man, prematurely white-haired, totally emaciated. He keeps asking the specter how long he's been buried, and the answer is always exactly the same, almost 18 years. Then he follows up by asking, "You know that you are recalled to life?" To which the ghost just sort of blankly replies, "They tell me so."
So this brings us to a frankly terrifying question. What does it actually mean to be buried alive and then recalled to life? And just to be clear, we aren't talking about a literal cemetery grave here. No, we are talking about a living man who has been completely stripped of his freedom, his identity, and his mind, literally erased from the world of the living. This single, stark image really frames the entire narrative for us, forcing us to examine the psychological unearthing of hidden pasts. Because, think about it, when someone has totally abandoned all hope of ever being dug out, can they ever truly rejoin the living?
Okay, let's dive into this. Remember that cryptic, blazing strange message Mr. Lorry received from a messenger on horseback? Recalled to life. This phrase is actually the overarching motif for character resurrection throughout the entire story. Academic analyses constantly point out that this isn't just some throwaway line. It's the structural backbone of Book 1. I mean, the whole first book is named Recalled to Life. It symbolizes a physical or spiritual resurrection from a state of metaphorical death. Our buried specter is about to be pulled from his tomb, and it sets off this massive chain of resurrections that weaves into the destinies of literally every major character. So who is our buried man? It is, of course, Dr. Alexandre Manette. 18 years in solitary confinement in the Bastille completely broke this man's spirit. When Mr. Lorry and Manette's daughter, Lucie, finally track him down in a dark little garret in Paris, he is absolutely not the brilliant physician he once was. He's a crushed, broken man. He's reverted to just mindlessly making shoes. Later on, when questioned at a trial, Dr. Manette actually admits his mind was a complete blank. He has zero memory of being rescued. The sheer trauma of being buried away to silence him essentially erased his humanity, leaving behind only this rhythmic, desperate coping mechanism of a cobbler. Now, what's really fascinating about this is how modern psychological research totally aligns with Dickens's depiction. Scholars note that Dickens was deeply, deeply disturbed by the solitary confinement practices of his own era, and we see that horror channeled directly into Dr. Manette. The psychological toll of the Bastille is huge. Manette suffers a complete loss of personal identity. Get this, he doesn't even know his own name. When asked, he responds only with his cell location, 105 North Tower. He is entirely defined by his tomb. And even years after being freed, whenever he faces severe stress, that submerged prison trauma just bubbles right back to the surface, and he relapses into that mechanical shoemaking. The prison literally sank into his blood.
Let's move on and see how this builds, because, as we all know, secrets never stay buried forever. Fast forward a few years, the French Revolution ignites, and the Bastille is stormed. But the revolutionary leader, Defarge, who, by the way, was once Manette's servant, isn't just there to free prisoners. He is hunting for the truth. He actually forces a guard at knife point to take him to 105 North Tower. While making alterations in the old dungeon, workmen find an inscription on the wall. At first, they think it's the initials DIC, but upon closer look, it's a desperate command, dig. And when they dig beneath the paving stones, they find the ashes of a small leather bag and a hidden paper. Dr. Manette's physical secret has finally been unearthed.
Which brings us to the exact, chilling words Manette hid in that chimney wall. He hid this knowing he was on the absolute brink of losing his sanity. The letter starts like this. These words are formed by the rusty iron point with which I write with difficulty in scrapings of soot and charcoal mixed with blood. Wow. He wrote this in 1767 in his 10th year of captivity, stating that all hope had quite departed from his breast. He secreted it away, hoping some pitying hand might find it when he and his sorrows were dust. It is literally a voice from the grave, written in the victim's own blood, screaming for justice across 18 long years of silence.
So, the crucial point is, what did that bloody letter actually contain? Well, it exposes the horrific crimes of the ultra-wealthy, aristocratic Evremond brothers. Manette had been called in to treat a young peasant woman who had been brutally raped by the younger Evremond, and he also found her brother, who was murdered while trying to defend her. Because Manette had morals and refused to accept a bribe to keep quiet, the brothers used their political power to just throw him into the Bastille without a trial, condemned to rot in the dark. And at the end of Manette's letter, he does something terrifying. He explicitly denounces the Evremond brothers and curses their entire aristocratic line, delivering them to the judgment of heaven and earth.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the whole recalled-to-life motif begins to weave into the lives of everyone else. If we map out the rising action of the novel, this theme doesn't just apply to Dr. Manette. It extends directly to his son-in-law, Charles Darnay. Now, Darnay is secretly the nephew of that wicked Evremond marquis, and he's been living in England desperately trying to escape his family's toxic legacy. But Darnay is put on trial for his life for treason at the Old Bailey in London. It's a literal matter of life and death. But he is miraculously acquitted, essentially recalled to life from a guaranteed death sentence, all because he happens to bear a striking physical resemblance to a cynical, drunken defense attorney named Sydney Carton. But wait, before we reach the climax, we have to appreciate the dark, almost comedic parallel Dickens sneaks in here. While Dr. Manette gets this profound spiritual resurrection, Mr. Lorry's messenger, Jerry Cruncher, has a slightly more, let's say, literal approach. Jerry calls himself an honest tradesman, but his actual side hustle is acting as a resurrection man, which means he literally sneaks out at night to dig up fresh corpses to sell to anatomists. Dickens masterfully contrasts the holy, spiritual resurrection of the mind and soul with the muddy, incredibly gruesome literal unearthing of the dead. It's his way of constantly reminding us that digging up the past is a dirty, dangerous business.
Which brings us to the tragic climax, because the past never stays buried. Charles Darnay makes the mistake of returning to France and is immediately arrested by the revolutionaries. At first, it looks like Dr. Manette's legendary status as a Bastille survivor is going to save Darnay. But then comes the ultimate twist. The revolutionaries, led by Defarge, suddenly produce the blood-written letter dug out of 105 North Tower. Dr. Manette's very own buried secret, his personal curse upon the Evremond line, is used by the bloodthirsty tribunal to condemn his own son-in-law to the guillotine. The long shadow of Manette's 18 years of trauma stretches all the way across time to murder the man his daughter loves.
But the cycle of vengeance is ultimately broken by an unbelievable sacrifice. Sydney Carton, the cynical barrister who basically considers his own life completely worthless, uses his uncanny physical resemblance to Darnay to sneak into the prison. He drugs Darnay, switches clothes with him, and willingly takes his place at the guillotine, saving Darnay's life. As Carton goes to his death, fulfilling a promise he made to Lucie Manette, he repeats this profound biblical realization: I am the resurrection and the life. Through his sacrifice, Carton is spiritually resurrected from a wasted life of apathy, and Darnay is physically recalled to life to return to his family.
Which leaves us with this final, lingering thought. You see, A Tale of Two Cities isn't really just about the guillotine or the storming of the Bastille. It is a profound, timeless look at the anatomy of trauma. Those 18 years of buried secrets festered in the dark, ultimately demanding a reckoning that very nearly destroyed a family. So we have to ask ourselves, how do our own buried secrets dictate our futures? What unhealed traumas, what hidden truths are we suppressing in our own metaphorical North Towers? And more importantly, what's going to happen when the day finally comes that they are brought out into the light? Thank you so much for exploring this masterpiece with me today. Keep digging for the truth.